Welcome to this investment circle as part of the Star Portal. We're also going to be sharing today's talk on the Wealth Rebels show as well, where we just felt that today's talk was just too much to keep us all hidden within the world of the Star Portal. So you are in for a treat. I am Emma, I'm your host here. I am the original Wealth Rebel, where I try and create energetic shifts when it comes to wealth so we can truly embody our energetic wealth blueprint. So this today's talk goes without absolute saying, and it's an absolute gift to have Isabel Knight here with us today. Isabel, you are the fearless female investor who's on a mission to create energetic alpha where we're building true wealth in finance and life. And I don't want to steal any more of your time. I'm going to hand over to you immediately, just ask for you to share some of your wisdom with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Emma, thank you very much, and welcome to everybody else who might be watching this today and future date. It is a privilege to be invited to share this with you, Emma, and it is exciting for me because it's the first time I've presented this in this particular way. It's a concept that I have developed, and essentially, what we're going to be talking about today is how to build true wealth. And in my 20s, I managed a billion-dollar portfolio. However, whilst I was outperforming the MSCI index, Morgan Stanley index, I was underperforming in my own life. So I want today to share with you about energetic alpha, which is really about how to create returns in your life that compound across every area. And without further ado, I'm going to dive into some of the slides that I've created for us to share today. So, um, a little bit about my background. I said I started out in finance and I walked into the city and went from getting sandwiches for the fund manager to ending up being a director at Credit Suisse Asset Management, where I had the equivalent of over $1 billion of management in emerging Europe. And it sounds very glamorous and very exciting. And I traveled all over the place. However, I look back and I realize whilst I might have been materially wealthy, I was definitely spiritually bankrupt, really. So that is one aspect of wealth that you can definitely build. Now, I then did something slightly crazy. Other people might say it was brave, but I ended up moving to the mountains. I wanted to follow my dream and I wanted to take some time out, learn how to ski like a pro, and see what I wanted to do next. Now, that gap in my life turned out to be 15 years. So I then ended up in the mountains. This is Chamonix, a picture at the top of the Aiguille du Midi. And I spent a lot of time reflecting on who I was. I spent a lot of time skiing and having this very interesting, lovely life. But I moved from being a fund manager where I felt very validated and had a card, this is who I am, to suddenly being what I felt like nobody. I didn't have any specific career path. And I suppose I felt materially poor, if you like. And I felt very inadequate compared to lots of other people I met there who had these very successful businesses. So I want to share with you that we can have material wealth and feel bankrupt spiritually, and then we can be spiritually wealthy. We've done lots of work on ourselves, but maybe not have the income or the material wealth that we want. And there is a way to bring that all together to be able to build what I call true wealth. And that is what I want to explore with you today. And it's something that I've created, if you like, as an idea based on what I used to do. So let's go into that a little bit more in detail. So I said I was a fund manager in the past. So my role as a fund manager was to basically outperform a benchmark. In this case, it was the Morgan Stanley benchmark for emerging markets and in emerging Europe, as it happened. Now, every month, my role was to, whatever the benchmark might have delivered in terms of performance, say it was 5%, my task was to outperform that. So if I got, say, a 6% or 7% return on that month, then I would have deemed to be outperforming that benchmark. So my job, my role as a fund manager was to get what they call alpha. And alpha, as a definition, is outperformance versus a benchmark. So what does that actually mean? It means that I had to take intentional bets, if you like, against whatever was in that benchmark, whatever the companies were. So the idea was that I was taking risk into my portfolio in order to outperform. And it's a way of evaluating how fund managers perform. So I was curious about that as a concept. And I thought, well, actually, I think this could apply in life as well. So I've created this thing called concept called energetic alpha, where I believe it's the same sort of principle about where you can look to outperform in your own life as your authentic self. And this is what I want to dive into in more detail today. So let's look more about market alpha versus energetic alpha. So I thought what I'd do, and I unfortunately this has come up in one slide. I couldn't do it line by line, but let's go through it line by line so that we can just sort of unpick this. And I'm conscious, Emma, that if you have any questions, I don't want this to just necessarily be me talking. So if there are things you want to clarify, then please do that. So the key thing is, as I said, that market alpha is the excess return over a market benchmark, whatever the market might have returned. And you may well be familiar with the phrase ETFs, exchange traded funds. So they are the benchmark, if you like. And my job was to outperform that. Now, that's compare that to what I just said in terms of energetic alpha being outperforming your own expectations, your own potential. Now, outperforming the market is an external thing, whereas this is very much about internal. This is about actually how you show up in your own life. What are your visions? What are your values? Where do you want to go in your life? Now, this is the bit that I find really fascinating. Now, I was an alpha fund manager, and in a market where you're taking risks, it's a zero-sum game. So if I was outperforming, other people were underperforming. And it created this environment of win-lose. And this is very different to energetic alpha, where I believe that this concept is much more around win-win. If you're outperforming in your own life, if you're developing yourself, you're exceeding your own expectations in all areas of your life, this is expansive. It means you can build better relationships, you can show up better with the people that are in your life, and it's value creative. So it's compounding basically in my view. This is what's so special about energetic alpha. If you're in alignment with what you want to do in your life and you're continually growing, and it compares very much. The opposite is with alpha fund managers. Alpha, it mean reverts, and you'll find this often if you look at funds that as an alpha manager, I might outperform for a month, 2 months, a year, 2 years. Eventually, I'm going to start underperforming, and it will mean revert. So it's very difficult, and that's a conversation for another webinar to continually outperform the market. So this is where the main differences are. The drivers in the market are market inefficiencies and their skill versus other people, whereas this, from a energetic point of view, is you doing the work on yourself. It's that self-awareness, it's understanding what drives you, what your energy is, and showing up authentically all the time. So, and as I said, this is really about the market alpha was I win by beating other people or the market, and somebody else is going to lose. Whereas for me, what's so special about energetic alpha is I win by becoming the best version of myself, and by being that, I show up in the world so I can impact other people. So that's my summary, if you like,
Oh,
of
Isabel, I love it. You know how much I kind of resonate with what you talk about, because we're in a world where we feel like we have to be alpha males or alpha females, and I really, I don't have an issue with alpha male and alpha female if it really is the embodiment of energetic alpha as
yes,
that, because what we're doing there is everyone can thrive. There's enough
yes,
in the world for everybody to thrive. We don't have to work in a way of winners and losers and constant stress to beat. The word beat, you're beating something, you're beating somebody else in
yes,
order, you're hoping that someone else is going to lose so that you can win.
yeah,
And it isn't sustainable. The sustainability of it like you say, with mean reversion, everything has to come back to into balance eventually. And if we're out of balance because somebody's lost something, they're going to be unhappy fundamentally, and it's not going to create that equanimity in the markets even. And this is why it's never really made sense. And one thing that I'm thinking, Isabel, when you've been talking about this, is when you have energetic alpha, you're focused on yourself, everyone wins. It's like a single win. It's not like even win-win because that's two people. It's like it's just winning. It's
Yes.
and that's expansive because we're saying that things can just expand and grow. We know the universe grows. We know that energy doesn't actually go anywhere. Like when something wins or loses, energy just moves somewhere else. It transfers. So if we are expanding, we're able to share energy. Someone else is going to benefit from that energy because then they can fill up and they can expand. And it's infinite potential from my
I,
perspective.
I, the key thing for me this is that my my thinking around this is that energetic alpha is really a personal leadership pursuit. It's about
Yeah,
who you are, and we're obviously talking about wealth building here. It's about who you are as an investor, who you are as a leader, and most importantly, who you are as a human being.
yeah,
And the fact is that this is my belief is that the two can enhance each other. So when you do operate from a position of actually how do I build my energetic alpha, where with aligned where you are aligned, you're on purpose, you're driven with clarity, you've developed the resilience, you actually ironically may help your chances of creating sustainable outperformance financially as well because it reduces your reactive decision making, improves your focus. You're coming from a place of conviction rather than from fear or ego. So, and there is enough, there is enough for everybody.
but I
So,
like the idea of rather than it being outperformance, you're creating returns that you don't expect and you're compounding them because you reinvest in them. So you're not necessarily there's no benchmark. It's not like there's something that you are trying to measure yourself against. It's like you
well,
are creating, you're leading yourself. This is the biggest thing that I hear a lot, is that, thought leaders, when we're trying to kind of do things a certain way and work within certain kind of rules and regulations in a restricted way, we're not able to lead. We're not able to think for ourselves. And when we lead ourselves, we're able to see what it is that we want to create. And then we start creating things that the world really needs. We start
yes.
investing into things that have real value for the world. And again, it goes back to how to invest, right? Values driven investing, looking at the actual companies and the stocks. And I'm sure these are some of the things that you are so attuned with as a fund manager, looking at the actual value of a company and thinking, well, the index is telling me to sell it, but I still see value in it. And that's how we should look at ourselves again, when we start investing in ourselves and we look at that, we start to kind of reduce pressure and stress and start to create from a place of that clarity. And then we can start making really smart investment choices.
Well, I'm going to go into that now. You raised something really interesting, and that's about what are you measuring your life against? And I think that this is a really important point that wealth, and you and I aligned on this. Wealth isn't about endlessly chasing more, because I worked in the city where people had millions of pounds coming in, and it wasn't enough. There was always more that could be made. And when I remember when I moved to the Alps, brokers of mine, people I knew in the industry going, "Oh, I wish we could do that." I said, "Well, you can, you just need to give up your job." "Oh, no, because I need another million to do X, Y, and Z." There is never enough. And so when you are measuring yourself against external benchmarks, income, net wealth, professional status, recognition, etc., these aren't necessarily the well, they're going to lead you to a place I'm going to talk about in a minute. But the if you then compare that to internal benchmarks, how am I in terms of inner peace? Alignment with actually what my values are, where I want to go, how do I contribute, how do I show up in the world, and what's my level of energy, my vitality, my health and well-being. Depends on what you're measuring. And the interesting thing on this is that when you focus on the left hand side, on the external benchmarks, and I was definitely in this place. I was materially driven, but spiritually empty. As I just pointed out, there is never enough. And you'll see, we all know people who've got lots of money in the bank, but they're still not happy. It's just not enough. And then, to be fair, we need to look at the other side of it. If all you're doing is working on your mindset and so on and so forth, then there's a potential that you might be spiritually wealthy, but broke. And I think actually a lot of women fall into this place where that they feel it's wrong to want more because it's greedy and whatever the conversations are around that, or they don't know how to. So it's about actually recognizing this and moving to a place of balance. And I wanted to dive a little bit more into this in terms of, and again, this will be familiar with many many people on this call are watching, is this sort of scarcity mindset, which is definitely pervasive, and it goes back to this beating other people, because the scarcity mindset, sort of the prevailing thing is there's a finite amount of money, energy, resources, whatever it might be, and I've got to get my bit before someone else gets their bit, because it's a zero-sum game. So the problem is this pervasive sense of scarcity in every area of life, which again, some of the listeners might relate to this. So overworking, burning out, avoidance, which kind of drives that more scarcity and kind of getting into that situation where we're sort of burnt out, unhealthy, poor relationships. And this is in the same way that if you do the right things, you can build up your energetic alpha, you can your energetic space, if you like. This negative spiral is definitely about energy depletion. And then again, we this leads to, or it's part of this, is also about this fear-based loop around building financial wealth. And again, I think a lot of your listeners, and I know this myself, I've been through these stages myself where I'm not good with money. It's too difficult. Someone else handles it better. I messed up before. Um, all these different fears, if you like. Again, coupled with scarcity, and they're two different things, but they often come hand in hand. Mean that a lot of people don't look at growing material wealth from a very spiritually balanced point of view. So I
Yeah.
think the key message here, because I do want to keep bringing it back to our aim here, is to build true wealth. It can't be just one or the other. And we could have a webinar about how to build material wealth, and we can go into different aspects of that. And we could have a conversation about spiritual wealth, but we need to bring those together. So I want to keep making sure that we
Bring
that
it
we
back to the center. I
yeah. And the key
100%,
thing
I
on
love
this,
it. Hmm.
the key thing on this, and again, this we could talk for hours on this, um, is that money money isn't the goal here. It's the fuel. And we've talked previously about how money is another, it's another form of energy, right? And that part of doing the inner work on ourselves is that we can look at, great, I've done the inner work, I've done the financial education. Now I can bring those together to do the investing in a way that will grow the money that I have, so I can use it with intention, create the life and the world that I want ultimately. When, again, I'm not suggesting that everyone who listens to this is female, but certainly for women, taking back economic agency, financial agency in their own life, and being able to go, actually, I am going to create money in my life. I am going to learn about investing or build a business or whatever it is to build that wealth. Then I then, as a female, can then deploy it, and I can invest in companies that I want to see grow and thrive. And by doing that, we can change the economic landscape. So this is
Because women invest different. Women behaviorally, men and women are different. We invest in a different way. So if more females were also to invest into the stock market, the behavioral finance of the landscape of investing would shift as well. It's just like having more female at board level, because the way we are, we're very, very different. We're just made differently, and that's okay. But do you know what? Men and women listen to this show, and one thing that you talked about that really kind of resonated with me is that I think a lot of women at the minute are running away from being energetic, not energetic alpha females, because they're like,
Correct.
I have had enough of being a man or
Yeah.
perceived, male kind of attributes. And so they're running away and they're saying, sod it, I'm going to be spiritual. I don't want any of it anymore. And then there's a lot of females that have children and babies, and then they start their own business and they just start giving them things away for free because having a child sometimes knocks your confidence so much. Because it creates an actual emotional and chemical shift in your body. Whereas, because before, and it's all about chemistry, it's the chemicals and hormones and emotions. All of these things are what makes up your energetic system and your
Yes.
beingness. So when you have a baby as a female, your emotions shift to being way more feminine, and it's almost like you don't know how to go back. And it's like you have a breakdown of who you used to be. And so we're seeing a rise then of the spiritual aspect because they're connecting with themselves for the first time, the more of their feminine side, and they're fearful of that. But then equally with men, again, a lot of them are going, I have had enough of having all the pressure on me,
Yes.
all the pressure to deliver. And so there is this massive emergence of spirituality for men as well. And for them too, going into this different plane of beingness and wanting to escape from the life that they had created. But if you go back, if you were just to think back to your slide before about the fear-based system, I call it, the fear-based, the scarcity, the beliefs, often the beliefs as well are so deep-rooted. It's I'm not good enough, or I am not deserving of dot 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 love, money, a relationship, all the material things. We feel like we're not really deserving of it, even when we have it, even when we have the business, the family, the life. Our beliefs, because our beliefs are forged and forced into our brain, and I say forced because they're put on us by
Yes.
nourishment by the age of 6, and so we loop. And so, we can see when people are clearly in a business that's not working anymore, it's their identity because they've identified as something external to them because they don't perceive themselves as the value, and they have a belief system that they're not good enough. So if I keep building this, and this is going to make me feel good enough, but we know it never happens. And so we end up seeing the fear of running away from being the alpha male or the alpha female on, and it's just not working. It is a broken system. Really interesting. Just to well, before we carry on with your presentation, synchronicities are not a coincidence,
No.
right? The breath is the connection between the way that we feel and the body and the spirit and the spirituality. Because the word breath in Latin is spider, which is spirit in Latin. So the breath is the spirit.
Okay.
Okay. So when we go to the Alps, and I don't think it's a coincidence that people go to the mountains, in the Alps, in the mountains, we breathe better. And so it could be that whilst we've got all of these amazing fund managers in the Alps or brokers, they're breathing better
Yeah.
actually. So they're probably able to survive better. It was an intuitively smart place for you to retreat to, the French Alps, for you to go in that time. And I don't think anything happens by chance at all, because that's where we breathe. It's why the yogis live in in the mountains, and they built pranayama and the breath work, and all of that. So I'm always trying to connect it a little bit with some of the people that might be interested in connecting the real wealth with
Yes.
money and spirit, physical and
Totally. No.
metaphysical.
No. Totally. Yes. It. I do miss the fresh air of the Alps. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Um. So. So part of this is walking people through a view on energetic alpha, and one of the key things in and I'll go into this in more detail, but in sort of a process of how do I increase my
How do I increase it?
is actually first part has been looking at actually what benchmarks or what am I measuring myself against in my life? Are they external or are they internal? So those are some of the things we've talked about. Brought that back to about finance and money is a fuel now, and we've talked about this before. One of the key things I think is that we need to be more risk on in our lives because to really flourish and taking it back to my role as a fund manager, I had to take active risks. Like if I stayed with the benchmark, I would have just got normal returns. I was being paid to get alpha returns. I had to look to make decisions that were risky because they weren't following the normal trend to be able to get that outperformance. And it's the same principle in our lives. It's about being willing to take on risks. Now, I say this, and people will go, I don't, that's risky. I don't want to do that. And I want to make the distinction between risk and being reckless. And I'm not inviting people to be reckless. And I climb, I ski off piste, I get lowered into really random cool walls and stuff. Now, I do all that, and you might think that's reckless, but it isn't reckless because I've trained myself. I understand the conditions. I do risk assessment the whole time. So this is this is about being willing to take intentional risks in your life that are aligned, and that in taking that risk, the opportunity is to get higher returns. And that's the only way financially you can get higher returns is by taking more risk in a portfolio. And you know this, Emma, if you want to have completely risk-free returns, you stick it under the bed. And,
And it's
ha
not risk-free because it's every day. Someone might as
well,
well come and shave some of your pound
yeah.
off with an
Well,
actual razor blade.
well, that's again a whole other conversation. It's not risk-free at all, but that's what people perceive it
But
to
it's
be.
perceived, everything is perception. It's perceived
100%.
risk, right?
100%. I completely agree with you. But I guess I'm trying to sort of highlight this point that we take risks all the time. Like, if
Yeah,
you want a risk-free life, you'd stay in bed because actually from you could fall out of bed, break an arm, you could fall down the stairs, you could
yeah.
burn making the tea, all of these things, but you take calculated risks all the time. And the invitation in this to build energetic alpha is an assertion, not an assertion, that's not a word, assertion that actually we have to be more risk on. Risk, in my opinion, is always better than regret. We regret the things we didn't do. Take a risk, have that conversation, ask for a pay rise, learn about investing, whatever it is in your life, be willing to take that risk. So I want to move on to sort of the three things that I think, the three shifts to help people listening to this, how they might start to look to understand energetic alpha as a concept, and then how they can start to increase it, if you like, in their own life. So first thing we talked about was definitely, in my opinion, shifting the benchmark. So recognizing that you're never going to have enough money if you're valuing yourself against your net income and your net worth, because someone is always going to have more than you. So maybe there's a way of reframing that to actually your internal alignment. What does that look like to you? How great was your day to day because you contributed or you felt in line with your values? Because that's the thing that's going to make a difference in your life. We just talked about taking on more aligned risks. If you want higher returns, you need to be more risk on, using a good trading analogy. And then I want to go into this. I want to share with you, so follow some of my fund manager rules for life. Now I've created 11 rules, teaching people about finance and then mapping that onto what the spiritual life application is. Now, we don't have time to do all of them today, but I'm going to focus on four that I think are really fundamental. So if you're happy, I'm just going to crack on with that. So start with a clear strategy. Now, it seems obvious, but certainly from an investor point of view, it's important to know what am I trying to achieve here? Is it capital growth? Is it income growth? Am I going to be trading? What is it? What am I going to be doing? And how am I going to be doing it? So creating a plan. Then it's the same, obviously, with in life. It's about looking at your whole of your life. sitting down, going, actually, why is it I want to achieve wealth? How is that going to impact my life? What does my life vision look like? Really important. Start with what your values are. What is it that's important to you? Do that work because that's the bedrock, that's the fundamental platform from which everything else will come. So that's my first rule. Second of all, now this is interesting for me as a fund manager. This is a hard one. I had a portfolio of companies, now there might have been a company that was continually underperforming. Now you might think, well, it's easy, obvious to get rid of it, but actually, because I'm attached to it, I might go, I'll buy a bit more, I'll buy a bit more, I'll buy a bit more. Now you're fully invested in this, and it's actually really quite hard to go, I've made my losses, I'm now going to cut them, and I'm just going to focus on those that I'm I think are winners. Um, so it's really, really important in finance to understand that as a concept, and it's not easy because we get emotionally attached to things.
Yeah.
And
Attachment is the biggest thing. When we are attached to something that is outside of us and we feel that attachment, it's going to
yes,
you how we feel. And it goes back to not just the companies that we've bought or the funds that we bought, even the companies that we run when we've got a bad idea and we're so attached to it and it's screaming, it's just not working.
yes,
It's time to let it go and cut your losses. No matter how much money you've burned, we used to call it sunk costs. In
yes, yeah,
accounting, you've got sunk costs. Sink the costs, make your losses, because guess what? Your losses can offset against other gains in other areas, usually from tax
100%.
perspective. Sometimes it's better to start again.
It's so true. And I mean, I can, again, not the conversation today, but just let anyone listening know that I have made some very bad personal investments in my life where I've made considerable losses. But you know what? Cut them, move on. There's the next one. And it's that willingness to let go, be unattached, not get into a spiral of, oh my gosh, that was so awful. I've made the mistake. I'm never going back again. Go, you know what? What can I learn from that? Let's move on. And it's the
Learn your
same,
lessons, big,
yeah,
big
life lessons.
lessons.
100%. So it's the same. So mapping that on into life, and if you're going to be building and be an outperformer in your own life, it's really about understanding your mindset, letting go of limiting beliefs that don't serve you. I'm sure we've all got. Actually, I have very few, none anymore, unhealthy relationships because I've let them go. I don't need those anymore. I don't need toxic relationships in my life, and that can be hard to do as well. Or old identities. I used to be this person, or I was like this, or so all of these things. Again, it's taking a sort of what was the word, snapshot of where you are in life and looking at the things that that serve you. Oh, that those relationships, those things that I do over there, and these really don't serve me anymore. So letting them go, moving on from those. So that is another key, one of my fundamental fund manager lessons, if you like. Then this is really important. This is almost the thing that I'm probably most passionate about is obviously if you're an investor in the stock market or you're a trader, um, you need to be prepared for volatility. And the key thing as an investor is to stick your course. Back to my first point, if you've made a plan, stick with your plan. Markets are going to swing. If you invested in this thing because you believed in it, stick with it, unless there's some fundamental reason to the second point, that you go, actually, I now need to cut my losses. But if you believe fundamentally that it's a good investment and just the market's moving in the wrong direction, it's not to panic sell, to stick with your belief. And Emma, you know that female investors actually outperform men. And there was that great Fidelity report. I don't know, 10,000 investors and women outperform because they tend to do the research, they back themselves, and they don't panic sell. And that's one of the issues very often with men is the fear and FOMO. They're in and out of the market as opposed to just be in the market. So that's from a finance point of view. And mapping this onto life, this for me is building emotional resilience. And again, I could do a whole day on this and sort of being able to emotionally regulate yourself. And by that, I don't mean that you don't have emotions. And I'm the first one to say I'm a very emotional person, but I know how to emotionally
We're given
regulate.
emotions for a reason. Emotional resilience is allowing all the emotions to rise, but allowing them to be seen and be heard in a really healthy way. And a lot of men and women are not allowed to have emotions. We crush them down and we don't see them. And that's when we end up with stress and our bodies can't think straight and then we make poor decisions. So this isn't just about saying, oh, we need to all allow ourselves to cry. It's real investing techniques. If we want to be a sophisticated investor in our life, in our investment, in the real, in like as an investor in the stock market, we have to allow ourselves to feel the emotions because emotions are coming up
Yeah.
because it wants to be seen, and then that will trigger the belief system. And usually, if the belief system is something unhelpful with what you're trying to do in the stock market, that's when you start to feel fear or excitement. If you're excited, it's because you believe it's a good idea for whatever reason in your belief system. But one thing you stood out for me there as you were saying this is philosophy. Having that philosophy, knowing why you are doing it, knowing what your value is in terms of your strategy for your life, for your investment portfolio is really, really important. And then planning out what that might look like and then sticking to your plan, being committed, having commitment to self,
Yes.
commitment to what you know is right, and not letting it's like going down the pub, isn't it? And then they're going, oh, now I'm going to buy Tesla instead because Tesla's cheap because Elon said something. And it's like, what's the truth?
Yes.
Is it true? Is it just hearsay down the pub? Is it someone that's can never stick in their own lane, so they're all over the place? Yeah, and absolutely, I think females can tend to hold their nerve more because we allow emotion more. We allow way more emotion to surface. So we actually become far more balanced as an investor and far more committed to things. So you can see it. You can see it. Well, it just is who we are from a very, very primal basis. And we need to lean into that and just become more human when it comes to these things.
I actually had, interestingly, I wrote two articles about this recently about how important it was to be able to emotionally regulate. And on the back of that, I'd had an emotional outburst with my son, and which ended up with me crying. And it wasn't that was the issue at all. It was that I hadn't regulated that I needed to regulate myself, and I felt out of control. And
Yeah.
what was great was I had the tools to be able to take myself out of the situation, come back, have a conversation with him, move our relationship forward. I didn't suppress it. And then what was interesting, I was sharing it with a man, actually, a couple, and it was the man rolled his eyes and went, "Yeah, women are just way too emotional. It's best not to show emotion." And I said, actually, I don't think that's correct at all, because actually by suppressing it, you're not allowing it to be. And actually, we are human beings, and actually to have a full range of emotions is really, really creates a very rich life. The energetic alpha around this, the skill, the outperformance here is being able to have that full range of emotions and not not react from them, if that makes sense, to be completely conscious, like, oh,
So we'll carry on.
yes,
So we'll talk about, I think we could do a whole session, like you say, on emotional resilience and regulation. Let's just wrap things up now, I think,
yeah.
because
I was going to finish my lot. That there was one more slide on here, and that Warren Buffett, one of the most famous investors of our time, he said, the first rule of investing is don't lose your capital, and the second rule of investing is refer to rule number one: don't lose your capital, protect your initial capital. That
the
should be your.
preservation. Yeah.
Yeah. And then with regards to life, this is really important to protect your authentic self, your peace, your energy, your well-being. So that would be my last one for today on these points, in terms of kind of marrying up financial rules, if you like, with life rules, which is all about actually how do you create outperformance in your life, in your own life, and create this higher level of energetic alpha, as I call it. And I just want to end on this, really, is that actually the return on an authentic life is really the greatest alpha, if you like, the greatest outperformance that you'll generate isn't in the numbers that you say, basis points being obviously a financial term. it's in where you are now and who you want to become. And it's this journey to becoming your authentic self, where you show up every day fully authentically living your most expansive life. For me, that is the representation of energetic alpha that will just flow into the rest of the world. And we talked about it right at the beginning about the expansiveness on this. So
I love that. Do you know, once someone's very spiritual said to me, well, if you are spiritual, and if anyone's listening that's curious about spirituality, when you pass over, if you like, because energy doesn't end, okay? Energy just moves. So the body, when we go to die, the body just transfers into to just the body and it goes into the earth, but the energy, your soul dissipates. And what does it take with you? It doesn't take the money, the assets, all of that is left behind. What it takes is the memories, the imprints, the energy, the vibration, the life that you lived. Because we don't, we always have the remembrance of who we are. That is what goes into your energetic field, is the experience of everything. So you remember your life that you lived. And that is what I think that is the benchmark. When I'm thinking of a benchmark, I'm thinking of what is it that we want to experience in our lives that's going to enrich our lives completely. That's the benchmark. Tick it off. Did I experience it? Because that's like, in the end, that's what money gives us. That's what it should all give us. It should give us that experiential wealth so we feel and embody it within ourselves and feel that peace. Peace is such a high vibrational state. It's when you look at it from a frequency perspective, peace vibrates higher than love and joy. It's enlightenment level. It's beautiful. So when we can aspire to have that, I think we're really aspiring to be energetically alpha driven. Thank you so much, my love. I really, really appreciate this. I think we don't really need to stop for Q&A at this session because we've talked our way through it. And I think if anyone is listening to the show, watching this back, whether this is in the Star Portal or whether that is on my YouTube channel, and has a question, please add questions in the comments. We're always happy to answer them. We could even come back and do further talks on this. I think it's always something that we want to bring to the world is this knowledge of investing in all these things and spinning it, the duality on it, on how we can reflect it on investing in ourselves. What do you want? What's one final thing you just would like to share? Is there any one final message you want to kind of give to the world in terms of being that fearless female investor?
Gosh, one last message. Well, I would say to your point, I feel that there is, and my passion is to create a movement around this, if you like. That I feel that, and I'm launching in September the Fearless Female Investor Collective, which will be very much around supporting women in terms of financial literacy, given my background in finance and so on and so forth, and this sort of soul aligned how to build that spiritual wealth. So if anyone's interested in, we are collaborating on that, Emma. So if anyone's interested in that, then obviously come through you or come through me, because what this is all about, and I know this is your mission too, it's about educating and empowering women and men to step into their own authenticity and build wealth in every area of their regards. And one aspect of that is finance, so that, in my opinion, you can build that true wealth, as I said, showing up authentically in your own life with all the resources that you need to make the difference that you want.
Finance is just the fuel of your life, and it just creates that ripple effect. When you start the movement, it creates a ripple which becomes a wave.
Yes.
So it's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your magic. I appreciate you so much. Namaste.
Great. Thank you, Emma.